just went to a recent VC conference. It was the British Venture Capital Association's annual conference. I was there a year ago. I think I was speaking a year ago. And a lot of the talk then was about sustainable investments and impact investing. Okay. And then 12 months later, I've gone to the same conference, and now they're talking just about AI, and they're talking about defense. And it's because, almost there's an anti-wokeism going in, that Trump's come in and they're all reacting, and now they're literally going, we can just chase after the money.
Yeah.
Look, if you're investing in impact brands that are trying to make a better world, you're not just doing it for the short term. You've got to believe in the long term. I frankly believe that unless we start investing in brands that are going to make a better world or better for you, we won't have a world.
My guest is one of UK's leading consumer brands entrepreneur and investor, Roger Wade, who started the iconic British streetwear brand Boxfresh in 1989, which he then sold to build BoxPark in 2010, the unique retail and entertainment complex made from repurposed shipping containers in London locations like Shoreditch, Croydon and Wembley. He then stepped down as CEO and sold the majority stake in 2022 and launched his venture capitalist fund, Boxfund VC, backing early-stage UK-based consumer brands with a focus on environmental, social and governance principles and purpose-driven business models.
Problem that you've got is most VCs, they believe their own hype. They think they're like masters of the universe, and a lot of VCs also are sort of tech geeks. Okay, so they think that you can analyze everything, and they think that the numbers never lie, and just, put your faith in technology no matter what happens. And I don't think a lot of them are operational based and understand about running operations. And I also think a lot of VCs are like sheep. They just follow the crowd, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. Frankly, all three of you, go fuck yourself. Because you know what? I would never go onto Twitter. I'd never buy another Tesla car. I have a healthy dislike of Amazon. I think they're destroying our economy. And Mark Zuckerberg, he's more interested in trying to appear cool than actually doing the right thing. So, all three of them, they're really lost. They're absolute muppets. We all laugh at them.
And this is my concern. They are the muppets that are in control of all of the information world today.
And the way that Keir Starmer has acted during this genocide in Gaza has been disgraceful. And it goes back to your whole point, which is business leaders like us we don't want to talk about Brexit. We don't want to talk about Palestine. We want our leaders to do it. But none of our leaders are doing it.
Yeah.
There's only a few leaders that are doing it. And they're unfortunately not getting the attention. And I think it's really sad that people like myself and you feel as though we have to speak up because they're not doing what they should be doing.
This is a CEO Retort podcast, the show that fearlessly goes after the difficult topics that we all need to talk about, campaigns for issues that we're all concerned about, and invites some amazing, inspiring, and remarkable guests who will help us navigate through this fragile world that we all care about. I'm Tim Al-Sheikh. Let's get after it.
You are listening to CEO Retort.
Before we started recording, I was chatting with you about my experience with investors, and I mentioned that I've been accused that I'm sort of anti-VCs or anti-investors, whatever, which I'm not. Just for the record, I've never been anti-anything, but it's more like my experience with the British system, whereby when you have shareholders and we have investors, there's certain things expected of you as a founder from the PR perspective, that you've got to behave in a certain way, you've got to say certain things, very PR trained, as it were, right? And I have to say, I hated it. I hated every moment of it. And I had to sort of, keep my mouth shut for like 15 years until about 2022, where I kind of managed to break free It was very painful. It was like I broke my limbs to unshackle myself, so to speak. But the liberation side of it was amazing. But that does not mean that I have issues with investors. And in fact, I thought one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on board, because you're one of the very few outspoken VCs out there when it comes to anything and everything, when it comes to ethics, which I'm like, we need more Rogers out there. But we don't have that many Rogers. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, and why that is. But also in the current political environment, do we need change now? Do you think that we need to have, the political, or sort of anti-political influence by business leaders, including CEOs, investors, etc.? Because what we're seeing right now is the exact opposite. And what I'm trying to do is basically show that actually, no, some of us CEOs, we are serious. We want change. And unfortunately, we have to get political sometimes, not because we want to. I know you don't want to be political.
Firstly, thank you for, inviting me on the podcast.
My pleasure.
And thank you for that very flattering opening. I almost don't recognize myself. So look, the first thing I've got to say is about, I'm like a poacher turned gamekeeper. I was a serial entrepreneur, and I've been on the other side of the fence with VC investors, and private equity, and I've seen a lot of terrible practices, and some of them have been involving my companies. I've also seen some of the good sides of VC. Okay. So I think I've got a healthy disrespect for a lot of finances because I'm an operator. Okay. Yeah. So that's the first sort of thing. And I think having a healthy disrespect for, sorry,
that's right.
This all up.
This is DIY, ladies and gentlemen. This is DIY. Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
This is real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually, for some reason, my computer's not operating, so I'm using my phone. So, I think the problem that you've got is most VCs, they believe their own hype. They think they're like masters of the universe, and a lot of VCs also are sort of tech geeks. Okay. So they think that you can analyze everything, and they think that the numbers never lie, and just, put your faith in technology no matter what happens. And I don't think a lot of them are operational based and understand about running operations. And I also think a lot of VCs are like sheep. They just follow the crowd, and I've tried to come to the VC industry with a completely different outlook. There is no point Roger Wade setting up his small fund, Boxfund, if I'm going to do what everyone else is going to do, because there's no point. Why work with me? So I've deliberately come to the industry and I've got a different outlook on it. So what I would say is that the majority of VCs out there are finance driven. Okay. They come from a finance background.
Yeah.
And that's great if all we need to do is raise money and sell a company. Yeah. But actually, most VCs need to add value to their businesses. They need to actually help those businesses. And in my experience, many VCs are really poor at doing that. So our big point of difference is that we're operators, not financiers. We've got a healthy disrespect for the money people, because sometimes it's not as simple as putting something into ChatGPT or letting the data tell you the answers. Sometimes it's based on your operational experience that you need to say to people, actually, no, we're doing the right thing. The numbers might not support it, but actually it's the right thing to do. So, for me, coming to the industry, I've really come to this industry to deliberately challenge some of the practices.
Yes.
I mean, examples of the practices at the moment. I just went to a recent VC conference. It was the British Venture Capital Association's annual conference. I was there a year ago. I think I was speaking a year ago. And a lot of the talk then was about sustainable investments and impact investing. Okay. And then 12 months later, I've gone to the same conference and now they're talking just about AI and they're talking about defense, and it's because, almost there's an anti-wokeism going in that Trump's come in and they're all reacting and now they're literally going, we can just chase after the money.
Yeah.
Look, if you're investing in impact brands that are trying to make a better world, you're not just doing it for the short term. You've got to believe in the long term. I frankly believe that unless we start investing in brands that are going to make a better world or better for you, we won't have a world.
Mm.
So for me, the commitment to impact brands is not just about money. It's a long-term commitment and understanding that that's what we need in order to make our world sustainable. That's what we need to make human beings more healthy. So it is remarkable when I have just this healthy disregard, and I share the same with you, Tim. These guys, they think they're master, and I hate to use the word guys because often they are, and they believe they're masters of their universe. They believe their checkbook will give them all the answers. But the reality is most of them wouldn't be able to run what we describe as a piss up in a brewery. They have got zero operational experience. So look, I'm happy to zig when they zag. I'm happy to call them out for what they are. We're investing in a sector that's not regarded as sexy, but we believe in it. We're investing in consumer brands because we believe people always want to feel special. Yeah. And we're investing in consumer brands that will make a better world or are better for you because we believe that's the long-term trend. And we don't go and invest in tech. We don't go invest in AI. We certainly don't go and invest in defense. But we don't do that, not because we don't believe in that. It's because that's not the area that we know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also, it might sound cliche, but sometimes it's not just about money. If you're a family office out there and you've had a major liquidity event, and this is really interesting. I went to a family office conference the past 2 years at London Business School. I'm an ex-London Business School alumni. And the first time I went, I thought it was crazy because they spent half their time talking about creating wealth and the other half talking about giving it away, philanthropy. And I just thought, God, this is so balmy. What about a middle way? What about investing in things that will make a better world and give you a good return? And that's the path that we're following at Boxfund VC. We're just trying to invest in brands that we think will make a better world, doing things that are ethical. And if that means calling out the VC industry for what it is, which is sometimes just short-termism and chasing the latest buck, if that's calling them out for saying, look, they promise you the world, but often they'll adjust the odds in their favor and they're just screwing the entrepreneur all the time, then we'll call that out. It doesn't worry me.
Yeah. No, well, that's a great point. In fact, it's a similar point that my last guest actually made, Angus Hanton, the author of Vassal State, because he said that he actually called out the investor community within the UK specifically, that they just want to flog off British businesses to American buyers. So it's like as soon as the company achieves some sort of liquidity through sales or whatever, or there's some kind of intellectual property. Oh, if Google is interested, okay, sell it off to Google. Like we've seen that with DeepMind, for example. Like he argues that a company like DeepMind should never have been sold. We should have kept a company like that as a British AI. Although that was 10 years ago, that was before the crazy AI hype that we see now. But he believes that we should have kept a company like that in the same way that France kept Mistral, which is like their open AI, as it were. Even though most of the VCs are from Silicon Valley, but that's a different debate. But
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, right? And I mean, the reality is a lot of US private equity and venture capital has come to the UK. I think we're at the tail end of it now because I think Brexit has caused incredible damage to the UK economy. But certainly at one stage, literally the Americans were flocking to the UK market and are
I know I pitched to them loads of times 10 years
our
ago.
investment culture has been dominated by the big US players. So whether it's the Blackstones or the BlackRocks or at the higher ends, or whether it's at venture capital, the Bordens, the Sequoias, whatever, the indexes of this world, yes, it was being dominated. And yeah, I do think that a lot of British businesses were being sold off to particularly American private equity and VC. And it's a shame that some of those businesses were not retained by British VC and private equity. But in the end, I think it's about the quality of the investment.
Yeah.
That's ultimately where the money comes from. It doesn't matter so much. What really matters is the attitude of the investor. Are they prepared to take a long-term attitude and help you in the long term to grow your brand? Now, unfortunately, I agree with you. I think a lot of American investment is based around short-term returns, and it's all about financial returns.
Yep.
And sometimes you need to have longer-term returns. Definitely in the case of AI, you've got to be massively concerned about national interests. Because let's just be frank, AI will blow all current search engines out the way. Literally, you will get all your information from AI. I mean, there was a while out there, as you probably know, I'm a very pro-Palestine. I'm actually just pro-life. I'm not even pro-Palestine. I'm just anti-genocide. I just don't do, children killing. It's just not in my makeup. I don't know what happened when I grew up, but I didn't grow up with the concept that killing children was okay.
Yeah.
So, for a while I was writing things and getting my grammar corrected in ChatGPT, and it would never let me write the word genocide. And that is why you have got to be so worried about foreign ownerships of AI, because eventually it will be the only tool in which will feed your information. You will not get information from news sources. You will not get information from Google. You will literally just put into your favorite AI, and it will literally spout out to you what it believes the truth to be, or what it's been told to say. Because it's easy to manipulate AI, but unfortunately, you've already got that. You've got a situation that governments are controlling AI, and, we've got to be really concerned about it. So yes, I agree with you. There is concerns about foreign investments in some certain domestic businesses, whether it's British or not. Okay. And there's also more of a concern about whether it's a short-term horizon in terms of investment or a long-term one. And I think they're the two things that we've got to be careful of. Is it worrying that you've got a lot of US private equity and venture capital buying up a lot of industries? Yes, it is, frankly. But, until there's an alternative, it's going to continue happening.
Well, I'm hoping that Europe could be an alternative, because of Trump, they've kind of woken up more or less about time. I mean, they're more proactive now than they've been for a very long time. No?
100%. I mean, I'll tell you a story. I'm a mad golfer, okay? And I was invited, I can't tell you the bang, but I was invited to a golf event, a prestigious UK golf club. And I didn't realize I was being hosted by US Investment Bank, because I was invited by somebody. And they gave, their chief economist gave a sort of dinner talk, and he just spouted a load of Republican bullshit, which was basically along the lines of Trump is great, America is great because we don't have any employment contracts, and we only have 2 weeks holiday a year, X, Y, and Z. And I got up and I said, you don't realize that ultimately, as an investment bank, you're selling, your biggest thing that you're selling is investor confidence. And you do not realize how much investor confidence in the US market has been tarnished by Donald Trump. Okay. So I think what we're now seeing for the first time, when I was young, I absolutely loved America. Now I see America as the great big bully, which is really sad because I've got incredible American friends. Some of the most intelligent people that I know are American. Some of the most liberal people I know are American. But unfortunately, America is being run by a right-wing dictator, and it's in the hands of Donald Trump. And I think that people are really starting to question, well, they're not starting to, they're really questioning, does America stand for the land of the free and democracy? I certainly, for one, would prefer a world in which America wasn't the global superpower, that there was three superpowers. There was China, there was America, and there was Europe. And I'm really sad to see that the UK has come out of the European market. I think a lot of that was deliberate. I think that, there was foreign forces working to support the Brexit campaign. And I think it's been the worst decision for the UK economy and for the British people that we've ever made.
Yeah.
In modern history.
Absolutely. I mean, it's literally, we shot ourselves in the knees, in the foot, in the head, everywhere. I mean, it's like,
economic self-harm.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about sorry, I'm just going to rattle on a little bit.
Yeah. This is the place for venting. Hence today.
All right. we talk about, Nigel Farage and, what a fucking joke he is. He goes on about caring about immigration, but as a direct result of the actions of Nigel Farage, who was the protagonist behind Brexit.
Yes.
He was the man standing in the European Parliament, embarrassing Britain every day. He was the man that created UKIP, which then led to the growth of the right-wing anti-European movement and Conservative government, which then led to Brexit.
Yes.
Okay. And as a result of Brexit, our immigration numbers did not reduce, they quadrupled.
Yeah.
And we got rid of all the great European workers that were coming to our country and replaced them with, from workers from the rest of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm. So what just makes me absolutely furious is this same guy is talking about immigration, but he's the person that's responsible for the growth in immigration numbers in the UK.
Yeah.
But people just seem to look at things in such binary terms, but rather than understanding the real cause of immigration and understanding, right, okay, let's understand, why did immigration, massively leap up post-Brexit? Why did that happen? We just go, oh, look at all the people coming in on asylum seekers, X, Y, and Z. We need to get more control. Actually, we want to get more control. We need to rejoin the European Union. Not only would it be better for our economy, but it'd be better for controlling our borders. And yes, even when you look at the situation of asylum seekers, let's understand the root cause of asylum seekers. Often asylum seekers were being created by British involvement and American involvement in the Middle East.
Yep.
Look at all the Syrians that left their country, which they absolutely love, and they had to leave it because we just helped destroy it.
Yeah.
Never mind about Iraq. Never mind about Libya.
Yeah.
So,
No, absolutely. And this is the thing that frustrates me. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I created this podcast as well, is that people don't seem to question the narratives. They see whatever they see in the media and they're like, yeah, it must be true. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't understand why they think like that. I mean, because I do meet people who, they question the media, but some people literally just, they watch, and I mean, like, even, sort of left-leaning media outlets like CNN, for example, who also have an agenda, right? But none of them are being very open about anything. They just spew out whatever the editor tells them to spew out, and people just suck it in. And I feel, I suppose maybe I'm hyping up my podcast here, but there's definitely a rise of this independent podcasts group that, including, journalists that are quitting the BBC, for example, and they're setting up their own thing. People like myself, I'm not a journalist, but I'm a tech CEO, but I'm also coming out because now,
you are a journalist, by the way.
Apparently,
isn't-
yeah, I was told
You're not born a journalist. You become a journalist the minute you start reporting on anyone,
Yes.
on anything.
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
you are a journalist.
Apparently, yeah. I mean, well, because I know some proper journalists, so I don't like I'm not in that kind of level. So I try not to. But no, absolutely. I mean, I feel that there needs to be this level of independent journalism. I mean, that's why I do what I do. But I feel, going back to the original point that I made, that the business class really need to speak out, because it seems that you mentioned this to me before we started recording, that when you look at the politicians, they're not, well, they're lying, a lot of them. Or, for example, the Labour politicians, although I personally know some Labour politicians who actually they're quite livid with the government. But I just don't understand why the government is not saying the things that you're saying, because it's not a lie. And I don't know what they're scared of. I mean, they control parliaments pretty much from top to bottom, but they can't say that, oh, Brexit really was a shit show. They can't say that. Yeah. I mean, well, now they started to say that the boats are the Farage boats, or they're starting to use these kind of terms. I'm like, well, you're about a year late. Why didn't you say that a year ago when you were elected? I mean, what's the problem? So it feels like the media class can't speak out. The political class don't speak out. The education system that's a completely utter shit show as well, which I'm very, very angry about as a father as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, who's left is us, right? The business people, like, who are creating jobs. We are basically trying to innovate, etc. But then people on LinkedIn, they keep on telling us, hey, you shouldn't get political. And I'm like, are you for real?
Yeah. I mean, let's address those issues. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I don't run out charge.
Right.
My phone's, apologize, because normally I'd be on my computer, but it's run out of memory, it seems.
Like I said, DIY. Look, DIY is lovely. I love DIY. So
look, we chatted about this earlier, but we cannot, and this is not, they love to use the word conspiracy theory or shit like that. It's just basically, if somebody says conspiracy theory, you're usually on the right lines, to be honest. But the reality is what particularly the events in Gaza has taught us is you cannot trust the mainstream media anymore. Okay. And I really am sad to say I include the BBC in that. And I never thought I'd ever see that, because it's clear there's a major Jewish lobby group within the BBC, and they've got rid of people like Gary Lineker. And when you look at the reporting by it, it's unbelievable. Like, let's give an example. It was terrible to see 2 Jewish people die in a synagogue in Manchester. We accept that. That's terrible.
Yeah.
No one condones that, as no one condones the actions of Hamas on October 7. But we had 1 week of reporting about that. And also our Keir Starmer suggesting that they cancel the Palestine protest. But yet every day that happened during that week, scores, we're talking about tens, if not, multiple numbers of Palestinians were dying at the same time, but we didn't hear anything about it. We had we had mosques being attacked in the UK, but we didn't hear anything about that. And it's this sort of almost a Jewish life or is more important than a Muslim's life. An attack on a synagogue is more important than an attack on a mosque. No, they're all equally important. And this is the fundamental principle that we should all live our life by, that everyone is equal.
And by the way, a lot of the pro-Palestinian protesters are Jewish people. Just said people.
Yeah, and let's be absolutely clear. There's nothing, and it's just a ridiculous argument. There's nothing anti-Semitic about being anti-Zionist. So it's just a ridiculous argument, and you're dead right. There's, Jews against genocide. There is, some incredible Jewish people that are in anti the actions in Gaza. But going back to what you've earlier said, what we've seen in the media is clearly been a one-sided interpretation of the actions that have happened in Gaza. It's not been a war. You can't have a war with a 5-year-old child who's kicking a football and you blow its legs off, or you kill it, or you shoot 500 bullets into a car with a 5-year-old girl on a phone or whatever it was, And the way we described it and framed it, we're describing it as a war. No, it wasn't a war. A genocide was being committed. The way we described Israeli hostages, but they were Palestinian prisoners, when majority of those prisoners had never been tried. They were hostages as well. Okay. It was a subtle framing to basically facilitate a genocide. And that happened across our entire media. So like yourself, not just our media, our politicians, like yourself, I've now built in a healthy distrust of our media. Okay. Which is really sad, because I really did think we had an incredible media, but the reality is our media seems to be controlled. And never mind what American media is like, because if you're a talk show host, you're going to get, if you say anything wrong, you're going to get kicked off your job.
Yeah. Under Trump.
Yeah. And it's not disappointing. It's not only disappointing that our media is controlled, but our politicians are controlled. Like, let's take Keir. I was a major Labour supporter. I came out in support of Keir before the election. I've been so disappointed in Keir and the Labour Party for two major reasons. Firstly, they've inherited a shit show, which is Brexit, and they've made it their Brexit.
Yeah.
Why were they not honest with the electorate and say, this is killing our economy? The OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, the own government office has said it's conservatively costing this country 150 billion annually in lost GDP, which equates to about 40 billion in lost tax revenues. Why did the new government not come in and say, Brexit disastrous?
Yeah,
we're going to rejoin the European single market, not the union, the market.
Yeah,
but no, they made it their issue, and it was dumb. And then we had the whole issue with Gaza.
Now they seem to be trying to reverse it. Now they're trying to. I think Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, was saying that she's trying to kind of bring now it's a Brexit problem now that we're seeing, and then we need to deal with that. And they say it's a Tory Brexit, and I'm like, it's been like that's
you
been the case
say
for
that
like
from day
forever.
one.
Yeah.
I can tell your listeners, I can tell you, when I met up with Keir Starmer, I can tell you when I met him, where I met him. I met at the Labour for Creators event in Covent Garden. I was being introduced to him. He looked for my support before the election. When I spoke to him, I had an audience with him. I said, look, Keir, I've always been a Labour supporter, but the most important issue, as far as I'm concerned, is rejoining the European single market. And he said to me, to my face, Roger, as you know, I was never pro-Brexit, and our intention is to rejoin and get a closer allegiance with Europe as soon as I get into power. 2 weeks later, on the front cover of the Sunday Express, he said he had no intentions of rejoining the European single market. It was the dumbest announcement ever. He backed himself into a corner. What he should have said is, we're not going to rejoin the European Union, but we're open to rejoining the single market under the right conditions, which was originally soft Brexit. Yeah. He backed himself into that.
But
and again, he's backed himself.
Why do you think that is?
It's pollsters. He is more led by, it's not about doing the right thing for this country, but it's about getting re-elected. And that's what I fundamentally have an issue with this Labour government, and I won't be voting for them for the next election. I certainly won't be voting Tory, and I certainly won't be voting Reform. I'll be voting Liberal Dem, because I want to have a bit of moderate politics. But he's lost so many Labour voters who are anti-Brexit, and he's lost even more Labour voters that were pro-Palestine, or certainly pro a Palestinian state and the rights of the Palestinian people for self-determination and not being controlled by Israel. And the way that Keir Starmer has acted during this genocide in Gaza has been disgraceful. And it goes back to your whole point, which is business leaders like us we don't want to talk about Brexit. We don't want to talk about Palestine. We want our leaders to do it. But none of our leaders are doing it.
Yeah.
There's only a few leaders that are doing it. And they're unfortunately not getting the attention. You know, I would say Andy Burnham would be a better leader than Keir Starmer because he stands for Labour values, you know, and I don't think that Keir Starmer does anymore. I think he's betrayed the electorate. And I think it's really sad that people like myself and you feel as though we have to speak up because they're not doing what they should be doing. And frankly, it pisses me off.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be doing a podcast. I want my leader to say what I think, which is what they did when I grew up. And leadership is about doing the right thing, irrespective of whether it loses you popularity.
Yeah.
It's about doing the right thing. We don't have that now.
Yeah. And actually, and speaking of leadership, even in the world of business, the thing that we've seen with the tech oligarchs in the US, when apparently they were always, you know, some of them
they can
even,
go
I think,
fuck themselves.
Yeah, but they're pro DEI, they're pro this, pro that. Trump got elected and they threw all of that
Mark
away.
Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, I mean, Elon Musk. I mean, you know, frankly, all three of you go fuck yourself. Because you know what? I would never go onto Twitter. I'd never buy another Tesla car. I have a healthy dislike of Amazon. I think they're destroying our economy. And you know, Mark Zuckerberg, he's more interested in trying to appear cool than actually doing the right thing. So, you know, all three of them, they're really lost. You know, they're absolute muppets. We all laugh at them.
And yet, this is my concern. They are the muppets that are in control of all of the information world today. Unfortunately.
Yeah, but that's because we allow it to be controlled.
Well, Trump allows it because obviously, you know, they're all American companies, which kind of brings.
But we let our leaders. We let our political leaders let us down. So you know what? If I'm Keir Starmer or I'm, you know, Ursula, whatever. You know,
von der Leyen, for those who don't live in Europe. Yeah.
Okay. And Trump threatens me with a trade war. Okay, all right, bring it on. You're going to lose more than what we gain. Because let's look at American tech businesses who are bullying our economies. Let's obviously know more about the UK, but I know it's the same as Europe. You know what? Amazon, Facebook, Google, Meta, Google. None of them pay their fair share corporation tax. They all use complex schemes to avoid paying corporation tax. They can't deny that. They use schemes in which they don't pay their fair share of corporation tax in our countries. Well, that should be banned. They don't pay their fair share business rates. What do I mean by that? Well, now the high streets of Britain and town centres have been destroyed because of Amazon, okay? And it doesn't need to happen. But they're paying much higher business rates in the high street than Amazon are paying online or with that warehouse. But yet, the Amazon van goes up and down my street, you know, 24/7. So we've got to realise that we've got to create a level playing field. So look, if there is a trade war, don't be frightened of it, because it's a time for us to also correct the over-dominance of American businesses on our economies, because Amazon is destroying the British high street, and British retail and hospitality are the largest employers in Great Britain. They're not doing us a favour Britain was a nation of retailers.
Yeah.
They're destroying our core businesses. And don't fall into the ridiculous rhetoric that actually was inevitable. No, it isn't inevitable. This is the same story that they said when, video is going to kill the radio star. Okay.
Yeah.
That video is going to kill the cinema industry, or TV is going to kill the radio industry. No. Podcasts have never been bigger, right? Radio is thriving. Cinema was thriving until COVID, okay? And retail can thrive because all they want is businesses like Amazon is they want global domination and they hike up the prices. And if you don't believe me, look at what Google are doing. Effectively, every business now is paying a sales tax to Google and Meta, okay? You cannot... It's obvious. If you want to get visibility online, you have to pay Google. Yeah. If you want to get visibility on Instagram, you have to pay Meta.
Yes.
Now they're even trying to dominate TikTok, okay, and make sure it's American owned. So all we're doing is giving our business to America. This has got to stop. It is an absolute joke, and we need to wake up to this. And let me say, while we're at it, trust me on one thing. No one loves it more being the breakdown of the European Union than America. Look at some of the latest rhetoric that J.D. Vance has taken.
Absolutely.
Where he hates Europe. He's the vice president of America. Okay. So we are in an economic war with America, whether we like it or not. We've just got to wake up and smell the salt. And suddenly, business people like us are realizing the same. We are in that economic war, and we need to do something about it. And if we don't do something about it, the UK is just going to become the 53rd state of America, the poorest state of America. And we're not going to be protecting our industries. And we all need to wake up to that. And they want to do the same to Europe. They want to break it up. They don't want to see the power of it. And it's all about economic strength. There is 3 global superpowers at the moment. There is China, there's America, and there's Europe. And there'll probably be India. Okay? Right? And you have to be part of one of those. And we're certainly not part of the American market. Well, we need to get back in partnership with Europe.
Well, we need to do that as soon as possible. I mean, I mentioned Angus Hanton earlier. I mean, there's a reason why he called the UK or Britain as the vassal state. We're basically America's 51st vassal state, and we are poorer than Mississippi, which is the poorest state in the United States.
Yeah,
and he literally, you literally repeated everything that he said, that the politicians over decades have failed this country. And his warning is that actually other countries can easily become America's vassal states too. And because I asked him, one of the questions I asked him was, if the UK is the worst case scenario of a vassal state. And he actually highlighted that, when you look at Canada or you look at Mexico, so these are basically direct neighbors of America, and they are actually holding their own better than we're doing, which is crazy.
As an entrepreneur, I like to follow the news really, really closely, be it in politics, the environment, health, fitness, and of course AI, which is my field of work. But the problem with the news sector today, that staying up to date with events around the world can be really, really difficult because it's impossible to consult a single source for the full story. The narratives that shape public opinion often just reinforce media and corporate-backed vested interest, and of course they push for whatever public or political biases of their readers. Not to mention, of course, they push a lot of clickbait stories to just attract clicks rather than trying to inform you properly. And this is why I fell in love with Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. For every news source, you can see if they have political bias, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them. And they've got this amazing tool called the Blind Spot Feed, which highlights news disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. I even see this with AI. For example, you'll see the left-leaning AI coverage tend to be kind of very doom and gloom, But then on the other side, or the right leaning, AI is the savior of humanity and everything. I mean, it's quite ridiculous in both cases. So it's so important to have a tool like Blindspot because it shows you the balance of this coverage so that you can actually see what the real story is, what's the crux of the story, which is super important, especially for somebody like me, because many customers around the world rely on me and my team to make sure that we inform them about AI and technology as accurately as we possibly can. But even for me personally, as somebody that likes to follow all the other stories, I want to make sure that my cognitive bias is in check. So check out this tool, it's absolutely phenomenal. You can subscribe through my link at ceoretort.com/ground news, one word, or scan the QR code that you can see on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, and you'll get 40% of their Vantage plan. It's the one that I use to get unlimited access to every single feature and tool that they have, and it works out less than $5 a month. It's basically like a cup of coffee a month. And your subscription not only helps our channel and our podcast, but it also supports Ground News as it makes the media landscape more transparent. They're not reliant on VCs, kind of like my company. They are absolutely 100% funded by their membership. So this is something that I really, really love about them as well. It's their level of independence. And I think we should all support companies like that to make sure that we stay informed as accurately as we possibly can. So check out the link at ceoretort.com/ground news, one word, or scan the QR code that you can see on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, and you'll get 40% of their Vantage plan. And tell me what you think. Do you like it? Is it working for you? I would love to get your feedback. So thank you, Ground News, for supporting this video.
But let's go back to you, because everything that you've highlighted to me, it suggests that there's a story behind why you do what you do. You mentioned before that a lot of the other VCs and investors behave in a certain way. Now, I personally have a theory because I have met a lot of them as well. It's really to do with their backgrounds. A lot of them come from pretty privileged, lifestyle, etc. But I do know your story. I've seen quite a few of your other interviews. But I feel that your personal story is really the foundation of your philosophy, your ethics, and the way you do business, the way you think about the why investors should invest in the right ethical business, as it were, in responsible capitalism. So do you mind sharing your story? Because I do get a lot of questions from young people who say, hey, I don't know how to start, etc., etc. So, share your story, because it is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, I think you are always shaped by the factors that you experienced when you were growing up. And you might not realize that when you're younger, but it's weird. They almost seem to come out when you're older.
Yes.
So it's the number of times that you'd have people going, oh my God, I sound like my parents. I swore that I never sound like my parents. But actually, that's quite realistic. That is what you end up doing. So in my particular case, my mother was Irish. She came from a very poor family in Ireland. She was working in a bookshop at University College Dublin, and she met my Malaysian father, who was studying medicine at UCD. They eloped. They had my sister out of wedlock, which in 1960s was not a done thing. They came to London, and then I was born a couple of years later in 1966. So the first thing was I was a product of immigrants. We spent my early childhood, I spent in Malaysia. So I was born in London, but then I went to Malaysia from about the age of 1 or 2 to about the age of 7. I lived quite a privileged life there. My Malaysian father came from a well-to-do rubber plantation owning business. And then unfortunately, my mum and dad, didn't really see eye to eye. It wasn't so much my mum and dad, actually. It was my mum and his extended family, because in Malaysia, the women were almost meant to be seen but not heard.
Yes.
And my mum would wear a mini skirt around KL, drive a sports car, and people were going, what the hell is this? And so we came back to the UK, I guess in the early 70s, when I was about 7 years old, 73, 74, and literally came back. My mum, myself, my sister, with just the clothes on our back. So we went from a really good life in Malaysia to literally with nothing. And we lived in a council estate, went to the local school. My mum eventually met an Englishman called, whose surname was Wade. And they got married when I was about the age of 12. And that's when I became Roger Wade. And I would say that I experienced a lot of bullying at school because, you know, I wasn't like your typical other school kid. You know, there was black kids in my school. There was a few a few Chinese kids, but I was sort of Malaysian Irish. I had a foot in both camps, I guess.
It's a mixed race problem.
Yes.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
And it was weird because in 1977, the National Front walked through Lewisham, which was bordering onto my school, and sort of there was pitched battles between black and white. And my school actually reflected this. In our playground, there's battles between black kids and white kids.
Yeah.
And I just got beaten up by both of them, right? So I don't think I ever fit in comfortably. And I think I really struggled to fit in. I was unfortunately a victim of a race attack, and I nearly died at a young age, at about 17. But I only really started to discover my feet when I left university. I struggled through university. I did want to become a doctor. I'm glad I didn't become a doctor, but I ended up failing my exams largely due to the accident. And then I only really discovered myself when I went into business. So going into business actually gave me my first, I was reasonably successful as a student. I was reasonably successful at sports, but nothing great. But suddenly I was really good at something. And I sort of really clung on to that. And as a result of that and a lot of hard work and persistence, I did well over time. And it has shaped me. So I think that the racism that I faced when I was younger, the racism that my mum faced being in London in the 60s and 70s when there was IRA bombings, and I used to see my mum used to put on an accent. She never spoke in a natural Irish accent.
Yeah.
She just pretended to be a posh English woman, and she wasn't. And that, you know, I only really reflected on that when I was older. So it has shaped me in terms of what has happened to me. So I guess, to cut the story short, I spent the next 35 years trying to make money. And then I realized, and when I made money, I realized I got to the end of that pot of gold, and it was a false dawn. It wasn't everything that it was made out to be, because I had everything I wanted in life. I don't need possessions to make me successful. Yes, I've got a nice house. Yes, I've got a nice car. Yes, my kids went to a nice school. But today I'm speaking to you from a small mews house in London. I have a little shepherd's hut that I love going in the countryside, and I like small things. I think if I'm not surrounded by bigger things, it makes me feel secure because I'm not worried about losing it.
Yes.
So I think a lot of that shaped me. And now, when I got to that stage when I was, lucky enough to be financially independent, I sort of had an awakening. And that awakening was that I didn't want to have on my grave tomb, here's Roger Wade. He was a complete see you next Tuesday. I wanted to have, here's Roger Wade. He left this place a little bit better. And that's what motivates me now. And, some people will say online, the haters out there, that, oh, you're virtue signaling. No, I'm not. I am just trying to live my life the way I believe everyone should live their life, which is without prejudice of any form, and to treat and to speak up against those prejudices. And look, like yourself, I don't want to do that. I'd rather just, not speak out. I'd rather that we lived in this beautiful world. But unfortunately, we don't. I've seen democracy disappear. I've seen people like Trump grow. I've seen greed grow. I've seen people like Netanyahu and his genocidal regime. I've seen Putin, and I reject all of that. I've seen Nigel Farage. I've seen Boris Johnson. I can't stand all of those people. They're everything I stand against.
Yeah.
What I simply believe in, and I feel as though I'm going on a bit here, it's just a very, very simple thing, a very simple philosophy. I think you can roughly divide people into two. You're either a lover or you're a hater. You either love life and love everyone in it, or you hate life and blame everyone for your problems. I choose to love life. And I think I'll leave you on this thought. Albert Einstein, near his death, was asked, what's the most important lesson you've learned? And I think everyone expected him to say E equals MC square or whatever, or the theory of relativity. But what he actually said is, the most important decision that you and I have in life is, do you live in a friendly or hostile world? And that is what the question that this society faces. Do we want to live in a world full of hate? Do we want to blame everyone for our problems? Or do we want to realize that we're one race, the human race, living on one planet, planet Earth, under one divine God, no matter what you call it? And that's what I want to do. I don't want to lead a life of prejudice. And I know I have some prejudices in me, but I fight against it every day. I'm conscious of it. I know my own weaknesses, and I try to fight against it. And I ask everyone out there, try to fight against the hate. Don't label everyone in simple black and white. The reality is, there's good Christians, there's bad Christians. There's good Muslims, there's bad Muslims. There's good Palestinians and there's bad Palestinians. There's good Israelis and there's bad Israelis.
They're humans.
They're humans. But let's not try and generalize everything and put everything into black and white. I mean, I recently wrote a post, and I've been a massive pro-Palestine supporter. And I wrote a post and I was saying, we need to now come together. It was the week of the announcement of the Trump peace deal, which whatever, but, whatever, we do need peace, and I was saying that it's important that Israelis and Palestinians over time learn to live with each other and trust each other. And it's important that the good Israeli voices are heard, as well as the good Palestinian voices. But it's also equally important to recognize there was bad Palestinians in terms of the Hamas and the atrocities they committed on October 7th, as there undoubtedly has been terrible Israelis that committed genocide in Palestine. Yeah. So let's accept both sides and let's work towards a peace. That's what I want. And I think that's what a lot of people want. And I don't know enough, but I'm only saying what I think. And I like to think that being so vocal on LinkedIn has allowed other people to be vocal. And that's gain momentum, because undoubtedly when I was first speaking about Palestine 2 years ago, no one was speaking about it. Everyone was so scared. Yeah. Well, I didn't have anything to be scared about. And what I have seen is gradually the voice of reason has dominated LinkedIn, which I think is probably the most sensible conversation that you can have on social media. Yeah. And you have seen a growing anti-genocide movement. And that did not exist 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, not even a year ago. I mean, I didn't see anybody. I mean, like you definitely, that's what caught my attention on LinkedIn. Like your posts, like you were very, that's why I thought, oh, maybe what is Roger doing? That's new.
Why is he so stupid? He's running a venture capital fund. Does he not realize what damage he's doing?
As an investor, what happened?
Trust me, I lost some, but I gained more, and not that it mattered.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I agree. I mean, I think this is like, in terms even with this podcast, like, this is under a year old. I mean, like a year ago, I mean, I only had like 1,200 followers, whatever it is, on LinkedIn. And as soon as I started speaking out against, mostly about AI, because I called out all of the damage that AI will cause to society. I called out that everything,
Massive.
I mean, everything that's happening right now, I literally been calling this out since 2014, right? So, because I'm involved in this thing. I mean, I've been involved in this for a long time, 25 years to be exact, right? So some people, those who've been following me for years, they're like, holy shit, Tim was right. Like, I'm like, yeah, it's like, and I'm not clever. I'm not clever. I just know how it works. That's all, But as I started, what I highlighted before as well, like AI has become such a big part of everything in our lives that you really have to start asking questions about politics, about economics, about the environment, about healthcare, about education, because everything is connected and AI is impacting every single one of those things. And now, what is it now? Almost 10 months on now, I've surpassed 13,000 followers on LinkedIn. Zero ads, nothing. Like it's all that. And as you said, it's like somehow people were like, okay, shit, this guy, an insider, he decided to stick his neck out. He's not scared, like what you did, right? It's like, he's not scared. Okay, now we want to speak out too. So they do that through me, or they comment on my posts. That's why I was like, I was laughing. I was like, I'm a journalist because I've got sources now, Roger. I'm like, I don't even know what to do with that.
I know. But it's really interesting. Let's just touch on that AI issue. And obviously I'm a user as opposed to being in the AI industry. But what I've really realized is, I don't know if you saw about a week ago, Netanyahu, I think in Israel, was giving an interview, and he said the most important battle was the battle to win the hearts and minds of people on social media. Okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Actually, he knows beyond that. He knows the most important battle to win is the AI battle. Okay. And look, undoubtedly, there is a relationship between Jewish-owned businesses and Jewish investment support of Israel. There is. I'm not saying all, but there is. Let's not be naive enough to pretend there isn't. There clearly is. There's a lot of major Jewish-owned businesses that are pro-Israeli agenda, right? And if you control the narrative, you control the masses. And unfortunately, AI is the easiest way to control everything.
Oh, yeah.
Because you literally just tell it what to say and not to say, and it will do it. And it will do it consistently.
Yeah.
And, and if you don't believe me, just input some dangerous words into AI, like, is Israel committing a genocide in Gaza? And put that into different AI sources, and you're going to get 10 different answers. Or try to get it to do a poster that says something like, Israel is committing genocide. It won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And actually, the one thing, I'm not sure if people are aware of this, that Tel Aviv has always been one of the leading research hubs for AI for a long time. Very long time. Yeah. That's not even a secret. That's official, because it used to be pre-Brexit. London, we were probably, I would say, maybe we're in the close second to Tel Aviv. Obviously, Silicon Valley, we're the number one. China was behind, way behind. That's just 10 years ago, Roger, right? Now, I mean, Tel Aviv obviously still is, superpower, AI superpower, obviously. And I've got Larry Ellison that, he's basically decided that he wants to take over. Apparently, he wants to take over TikTok US. And he made that infamous statement that he wants to make sure that the data that his cloud databases make sure that people behave themselves. And he's very pro-Israel. So that means he wants to. And the thing is, to be fair, TikTok, at the moment, TikTok is the only place where you can speak openly about the whole situation with Israel, Palestine, etc. Because obviously it's owned by China. But if Ellison takes over, that's gone.
In the interview, you've got to look at it. an interview a week ago from Netanyahu, he specifically said the most important battle was the battle for the ownership of TikTok.
Yeah.
And he's talking about controlling the media. And they've been at this for ages. This is not sudden. This is a coordinated plan across the board in terms of ownership of media, controlling the narrative, using political lobby groups, and all pushing effectively a pro-Israeli agenda. But we're suddenly waking up to it.
I know. And actually, there's a report that showed how Larry Ellison influenced the Tony Blair Institute financially. Did you see the news that he donated $250 million to the Tony Blair Institute, and there was that. I don't know if you saw that on LinkedIn. There was this famous photo of him with Larry Ellison on the boat together, fully clothed. I was like, at least that's a good thing. But basically, yeah, it's like he now took over. Well, not officially, but the fact if somebody like Larry Ellison gives $250 million to Tony Blair Institute, which is a major think tank, obviously very influential in
There's
Middle
a
East,
reason
Africa.
why.
Of course, yeah. So Ellison,
and who do they want to set up the interim government in Palestine?
Tony Blair.
Tony Blair.
Although Trump recently seemed to kind of be a bit meh about it. All of a sudden, it's like he's like, yeah, I'll see. It's like there's a lot of speculation going on about that. But officially, so far, Tony Blair involved.
I mean, the awful thing about the situation is, the reality is, we've got to be really careful at this moment because Israel and Trump, Netanyahu and Trump, let's just call it the way it is, they want to be seen as the victors. They want to go back to a one-state solution. They want to control Palestine. They want to be rewarded for their genocide, and they want to have total control on Palestine. And we can't let that happen. We've got to make sure that Palestine, there's a two-state solution. There is a safe Israel and there's a safe Palestine. And how we achieve that, we need to make sure that's independently done. But I don't think that will be achieved. And that makes me sad. I really do think that Netanyahu's and Trump's plan is it'll go back to the way it was, but they'll just be redeveloping it and be even more under the control.
I thought Trump wanted Gaza to be the second, what is it, the Trump Riviera or something like that?
I know.
I mean, yeah, no, to be honest, I think, I can't remember who said it, but they believe, somebody recently did say the same, that this whole peace thing is just a facade. I mean, the reality is, I think Trump absolutely wants to, his family, I mean, Jared Kushner is involved in the backseat. Yeah. And those who don't know, Jared Kushner has a lot of money from, the Qataris, the Saudis, etc., for property investments, that sort of thing. So the thing, the sad thing for me, going back to the humanity side, is that, going back, you made the point earlier that, I want to live in a world that is peaceful and just. And to me, what this so-called peace deal has done, it allowed perpetrators, the Hamas leaders, to get away with what they've done in October because they're living it up in Qatar right now. Right?
And they were also funded by Israel.
Yeah, so lots of money involved.
Fact.
Exactly. No, absolutely. I'm not disputing it. But the other thing as well, you got Netanyahu, who committed obviously the genocide, but he's convicted of multiple crimes in Israel by Israeli courts, and he's getting away with it. Trump wanted him to be pardoned.
He needed a war. Look. All right, let's describe this next section as a conspiracy theory, apparently. Okay. But the conspiracy theory apparently is the following. And then you judge, or your listeners or viewers make their own mind up. Okay. Jeffrey Epstein, he received all his funding from the founder of Victoria's Secret, who was a major Jewish benefactor, major supporter of Israel. Jeffrey Epstein had no known other major sources of finances, but yet he was living a billionaire's lifestyle. Okay. The so-called, the founder of Victoria's Secret gave him complete power of attorney over his entire estate. It's remarkable. What businessman does that? Okay. So that included the townhouse in Manhattan. And in that townhouse, they had famous people going in and out that townhouse. Obviously, we know Prince Andrew was there, going for apparently massages in rooms that had video surveillance in, and there was a major video surveillance operation going on in all of his houses, both in Palm Beach, both in Manhattan, and the private island that he owned. So it's maybe maybe it's a conspiracy, maybe it's not. It's fair to assume, and Ghislaine Maxwell's father was a Mossad agent, okay? So it's maybe reasonable to assume that actually Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. Where did this money come from? Why were major Jewish funders, Israeli funders, giving him an unlimited checkbook? What was the reason behind it? Now, the reality is he courted major political leaders throughout the world, and major financiers and business people and people from entertainment, including Bill Clinton, including Mandelson, and including Donald Trump. Okay. And, maybe they had dirt on him. And effectively, Trump is in the pocket of Israel, and it seems a pretty strong argument why he's acting in the way he's doing. And never mind leave the fact that most of, American senators and most Americans that are in government, as well as our own government, are actually lobbied and financially supported by the state of Israel. So, they're concerning issues. They really are. And they're all coming out in the wash now.
Yeah.
They really are. Is this what is happening? Is there a big, massive, movement to make sure that pro-Israeli viewpoints are maintained and a stance maintained? And I won't go there with other so-called conspiracy theories, but always ask yourself in the end, who gains? Why did he do it? Don't be so naive to think that things happen in life naturally. They don't. They are all designed.
Well, a lot of people they still trust the establishment and the status quo. And I think maybe the silver lining is that what we're witnessing in front of us right now with Trump, especially, that he kind of exposed that the whole status quo is just basically built on bullshit. It's like,
to be honest, in many ways, it's better to have Trump because
that's what I'm saying. He's so stupid to expose it.
Yeah. But before this existed, it has existed, since way back, JFK was apparently killed because he wanted just peace. And some people didn't want just peace. Who that was, we don't know. But, let's examine that. Who would benefit from not having peace,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a really sad state of affairs, but people need to wake up and they need to understand that we don't live in a world which is just black and white. There is a very shady behavior out there, and there is forces that are pulling the strings. I mean, you've only got to look at October the 7th and see, yes, firstly, Hamas was supported by Israel. Secondly, Israel were given warnings, but they chose to ignore it. Thirdly, Israel has got hundreds, if not thousands, of paid informers in Gaza, but apparently they knew nothing. Hamas were training right in front of them, and apparently they ignored it. Their own soldiers have said, Israeli soldiers have said, have admitted that they were told to stand down. Okay. their own cabinet ministers admitted that the Hannibal directive was issued, i.e., Israeli killed its own people that day to stop them creating hostages. I mean, it's not it's not black and white.
Yeah. No,
It is who gained.
yeah.
Why do they need it? Was it coincidental that BB was just about to be investigated and imprisoned, for various misdemeanors, not misdemeanors, but various acts in Israel? Was it coincidental that it was massive rallies against the Netanyahu government before October the 7th? Or was October the 7th a false flag event to justify a war in Gaza to appease the major right-wing Zionists within the Ben-Gvirs, the Smodriches within his cabinet, and to make sure that Netanyahu survived? Do your own investigation. Come to your own conclusion. Who benefited?
Yeah. Read
Good sources.
Yeah.
Read things like Double Down News. If you're going to get in it, Al Jazeera, Double Down News is, a lot of them are ex-BBC journalists and ITV journalists, and I think that's an excellent source of information.
Yeah. And well, this is what I'm trying to build. You can listen to this podcast. We're still new.
Exactly.
Try to bring real experts out of the shadows. Basically, that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what my company is doing as well.
And it's not even it's not so much. I wouldn't even describe myself as an expert. I would say that I'm just somebody that I've awoken, and I can see the way things are operating. I can see who gains, and I can see the way it operates, and I can see the manipulation of the media. I've actually had, people contact me and go, you're a anti-Semite, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just anti-genocide. Don't try and label me as that. They'll use whatever language they can use to stop publicizing the genocide that happened. But it came out in the end. It was always out. It was obvious to everyone, but it came out. So
yeah, the funny
people have awoken.
No, absolutely. But and also the funny story, because people kind of accuse me of that. Then I'm telling you guys realize I'm literally a descendant of the Holocaust victims. Like my entire Jewish family. I'm Jewish descendant, but I'm not Jewish because I've never been connected.
My wife.
Sorry?
My wife's great-great-great-grandfather was the first rabbi of the newly formed America.
Yes.
So my wife, even though she's not practicing Jewish, has got a Jewish heritage. My wife was in Tel Aviv the week before October the 7th.
Oh, wow.
So look, and look, there's incredible Jewish people. Look at Ben Cohen from Ben and Jerry.
Yeah.
Look at Bernie Sanders. There's incredible Jewish people.
They've all called it out.
Massively.
They're not anti-Semites, right? How could it's like...
And then you've got incredible movements happening within Israel itself, which, God, the bravery to do that is off the Richter scale.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm actually trying to bring a couple of reporters as well who are basically reporting the truth from Israel. I'll try and get them on board. I know they tend to go to the BBCs and the LBCs of this world. I'm probably too small for them, but I'll try. I'll say, look, I want to have a conversation. I think it's nice to have, because I think, the approach that I'm trying to do, I mentioned this to you earlier before we recorded, is that I want this to be just like an open conversation, because I'm hoping that at least people can see what we're doing here and have conversations with other people, explore. Like I said, it's not, don't just see things in black and white, because nothing is black and white, whether you like it or not.
Exactly.
Which brings, because I know we're sort of running out of time. Well, I should probably run out of time already. But which kind of brings me to, I always try to see, what is the future in terms of, not solution necessarily, but at least I'm thinking, do you have a positive view of the future? Like,
look, ultimately it comes back to what I said about Albert Einstein, and you've got to make that decision on a personal level. Do you see love or hate in your life? And I think every person has to go deep within to their higher self and say, are you a lover or a hater? Are the prejudices that you have built up in your life man-made prejudices? Have they been created, or do they really exist on fact? The reality is countries are man-made, religions are man-made, age is man-made, time is man-made.
Yes.
Let's just forget all of the things that divide us, which were actually deliberately created by man to organize us. And just remember one simple thing. We're just one race living on one planet under one God. It doesn't matter what you call it. And just try to treat people as you expect to be treated. There's no such thing as good and bad Jewish people, good and bad Christian people, good and bad white people, good and bad Middle Eastern, Arabic people. There's only people.
Yeah.
There's only our prejudices. And our prejudices are there to feed our ego. Because that's what it's ultimately about. Because they make us feel better about ourselves. It's just be in control of your mind. Be careful of your ego. And this is coming from somebody who had a big ego. I had a big ego, and I probably still do, because of my insecurity when I was younger.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to feed the ego, but at least I recognize it now. And just, it is difficult to take the road less traveled. It is difficult to go against the grain, but it's also so good for your soul. So do it. I challenge you all to do it. Don't just follow the crowd. Don't be scared to say what you feel. I mean, a number of times I have people talk to me about Israel and they start whispering to me.
Yeah.
I mean, did we whisper about the Nazis?
Yes.
No, you need to shout about it. Anyway, on that note.
Yeah, no, here, and the way I say it, just like I always say this even on LinkedIn and here as well, that the more of us speak out, the less the people in power can do anything. I mean, literally, these are just a minority of people on the top. But if the crowd literally says, you know what, fuck off, they'll fuck off. I mean, they're not going to just sit around.
It will happen by Israelis turning on Netanyahu. It will happen by Americans turning on Trump. It will happen by British people turning on Farage and seeing him for the snake oil salesman he is. It will happen on the Russian people turning on Putin.
Yes.
They will not win if we are able to get our voices heard. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that note, I've got to go. It was a real pleasure. I'm sorry about our technical hitches, but hey.
Well, we persevered. But if people want to find out more about your work, what you do, where can they go?
Go on LinkedIn. Just go on Roger Wade on LinkedIn and just follow us. Unfortunately, I can't accept any more connections, but just follow us on LinkedIn. And you can listen to my daily rants.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth it. I'm telling you guys. So, Roger, absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you, Tim.
Well, my friends, this is it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, before I go away, if you are on YouTube, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button below. It really makes a massive difference for the growth of our channel. And if you're following us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you need to give us a star review. Apparently, your following means nothing unless you give us a star review. Don't ask me why, but give us whatever star review that you think is fair. And if you're not following us, what are you doing? Come on, man. It doesn't cost you anything. It really makes a big difference. I really, really appreciate your support. But also, if you've got cash to spare, consider to become a founding member. We are an independent medium. We're not reliant on any kind of company that gets money from Russian oligarchs or any kind of weird sponsorships or anything like that. All of the companies that work with us are genuine companies that I know and I like. But ultimately, it's the members, you guys, our subscribers, our followers, our founding members, or those of you who actually just donated us like $1 here, a couple of bucks there, $5 there. All of that makes a big difference. This is what makes us truly independent. We're not chasing clickbait because we don't want clickbaits. We want facts. We want the truth. We want something that we can all aspire to and something that truly make us at least work harder to make the world a better place. Not just talk about it, but actually make it happen. And of course, it supports all of our campaigns as well. So my friends, thank you so much. Much love. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.